I've listed some of your books today, Mr. Kafka.
Books are a narcotic.
You are in a good mood today.
First impressions are always unreliable.
Oh, okay. Well, let's just go straight into the questions then. Do you thank your father for giving you the opportunity to receive education?
Yes, it was the only positive influence he exerted in my life. I learned German as my mother tongue. I also learned to speak Czech while attending a boys' elementary school.
And what about your Jewish education?
I received limited Jewish education as per my father's wish and attended the synagogue 4 times a year with him.
And during that time, were you especially interested in law?
Early in my life, studying law had not even crossed my mind. I chose law over chemistry after I was admitted into the Charles University of Prague only because it would not interfere with my mental life. Welcome, Mr. Kafka, to the interview. We've heard you hold a strong dislike for your past career in law. Can you elaborate more about that?
Well, my first professional job as a lawyer was for an Italian insurance company in Prague. I felt constantly depressed and pressured due to my lack of passion for it. But I did write a lot during those times to relieve my boredom, even though I was often penalized for writing on the job.
What happened then?
After about 8 months, I had enough, and I resigned. I found another job at a government agency that handled workers' compensation insurance. But I felt like I was in a cage in search of a bird. I loathed it. I did continue working there, though, because it was a bread job, the only source to support my writing. God didn't want me to write, but I had to.
It doesn't sound like you had much time to write. Am I correct?
Yes. I worked late into the afternoon, and after dinner with my family, I would spend the night writing, usually starting around 11 p.m. I would only stop once I reached my physical limits of sleeplessness. I write fast, and after a few months, I was able to publish my first stories in the Hyperon magazine.
What about your stint in operating a factory owned by your brother-in-law?
I enjoyed it. I found it to open my eyes to the Yiddish culture, which introduced me to the fascinating religion of Judaism.
Well, thank you for your time.
So let's start with your childhood. What can you tell me about it?
Well, I was born on July 3rd, 1883 in Prague. My mother also gave birth to my 3 sisters, Ellie, Valley, and Atla, who I'm the closest with.
We've heard you lived with your parents for a long time, despite your hypersensitivity to noise and craving for solitude. Can you tell me about your father, Herman Kafka?
The topic of my father is actually very touchy because we didn't have a close relationship. Instead, it was the opposite. I was always fearful and bitter towards him because he was overbearing, had an explosive temper. He also rejected my writing career and always felt the shame that emanated from him.
Now, can you comment on your complicated relationships with Felice Bauer and Gret Bloch?
Felice Bauer was a secretarial assistant that I wrote many letters to for a long time. I wanted to maintain some semblance of a normal married life at my father's urging, and we went through 2 broken engagements due to my aversion to the sexual consequences of marriage.
And Gret Bloch?
I met Gret Bloch about the same time I first met Felice, and we shared a close friendship.
How about Milena Jasenka Pollock?
We had a very close relationship, especially because she accepted and understood my views. However, that didn't last because she was married at the time.
We also heard later on you and Dora Demont shared a mutually influential relationship. Can you elaborate?
Yes, out of all my previous relationships, Dora and I are the closest. We have traveled together for the past year seeking treatment to my tuberculosis, and next year I am to attend a sanatorium. I've asked her to destroy some of my manuscripts because I'm extremely dissatisfied with many of them.
Finally, can you tell us about your lifelong friendship with Max Brod?
Max and I connected instantly over our communal passion for literature, and as my editor, he has been pushing me all my life to publish my writings. He's my closest confidant, and I believe he will continue to be until the day I die. Thank you for agreeing to this interview, Mr. Kafka.
My pleasure.
How strange to meet so far from Prague.
I'm never far from Prague.
Firstly, what are you afflicted with?
Tuberculosis, an infection in the lung and larynx, which causes emaciation and difficulty in communication.
What is your ailment's etiology? Is it due to senility?
Perhaps, but more so offset by sleepless nights spent writing and insomnia. I also got the Spanish flu 6 years ago, and a severe intestinal infection 4 years ago.
When were you diagnosed?
I remember that 7 years ago, in August, I began coughing up blood, and on September 4th, I was diagnosed. 3 years later, the tuberculosis spread to both lungs, and this year I was diagnosed with severe tuberculosis, which is why I am here. Dora, I need morphine.
Do I put the morphine? Okay. How has staying at the sanatorium influenced you, other than treatment-wise?
Well, I often took vacations as rest cures at other sanatoriums since they offered recuperation. They were the influences of works such as A Country Doctor, which was written after staying at a boarding house for people like me, and Hunger Artists about emaciation. Dora, morphine now!
Here are some last questions. Just answer whatever comes to your mind first, okay? Who are your most loyal friends?
All of my genuine friends.
If you could no longer write?
Then I can no longer live.
Are you afraid of death?
My life was sweeter than other people's, and my death will be more terrible by the same degree. I am more afraid of lonely...